Hey everybody, welcome to my channel. I'm Jenny from Star Stitches and I make and sell bags as well as design patterns for bag making. I'm super excited because today I'm going to show you how to sew up the Star Mini Tote. This bag is a fun sew and I rated it as experienced beginner only because of the hidden connectors on the side panels. But I think that anyone with some basic sewing skills can follow along and make this bag. So let's just quickly go over some of the features of the bag. It has two exterior slip pockets, one on the back with a magnetic snap closure and one on the front with a flap and flip lock or turn lock. You can choose which lock to use. The top closes with a recessed zipper panel, and then in the interior it has another slip pocket in the front, big enough to fit your phone or keys or whatever, and at the back there's a zipper pocket with a zipper overlay. The interior is nice and roomy inside, though not as big as a normal size tote. You can easily fit your wallet and all of your essentials inside. My full-size wallet fits down in there with room for a water bottle on the side of it. You can fit a tablet in there as well, and I'm pretty sure an iPad should be able to fit if needed. The strap is fully customizable on this bag. I opted to use two small chains and a fabric strap at the top, but you could make it out of just fabric and have it be whatever length you want. You could also add on an adjuster and make it a crossbody strap, whatever you want to do. Okay, so now that we've looked over the bag, let's just get started. Okay, we're gonna start by going through our pattern pieces first. We have our exterior slip pocket pieces. You should have two of them. And the original one had the printed fabric for the front, but I swapped it out this time. I put the printed fabric. It's going to be like on the back part, the exterior panels instead. You should also have two lining pieces that goes with that, both interfaced with woven because I'm using cotton. Here is your exterior, your top exterior slip pocket. That's the top piece, and then the bottom piece, I guess it goes like this, B and then C. Back exterior panel, and just so you'll know what it's going to look like, it's going to be like that. The pattern piece E, which is your side panels, two of them, both with Decaville on. All the vinyl pieces I have Decaville on them, except for this next piece. This is the bottom panel. I have fused foam to it, and then this is the Peltex that I'm going to add after I'm done quilting. G is the flap. Now your flap is going to look slightly different. Here's the flap, what it should look like. It's a bit bigger. I had hardware that I wanted to try out that just didn't look right with that size flap, so I'll show you. I wanted to use this piece, so when this is sewn, it'll be pretty darn close to the like going around the edge of this. And with this one, it just, I don't know, I didn't like it as much, so I made it a little bit smaller just for that. And we have two strap connectors. Pattern piece I. A is two lining pieces, and I cut the box corners out. Pattern piece K is your zipper panel pieces. Now, so how I do these, I wanted the exterior fabric to be both on the inside, like lining piece, like this, and on the outside. So that's why I have 4 of the same kind. You can just do lining for these 2 pieces if you want, and then keep these as the exterior. L is the zipper panel facings. I also kept them out of my seam allowances for this. Next is M. It's your interior zipper pocket. I have 2 pieces. They're cotton, so they are interfaced. You don't have to interface these if you're using something like waterproof canvas, water resistant canvas, or ripstop, like my lining piece. This is piece N. It is the zipper overlay. You don't have to do this. I put one into the pattern. It doesn't have the little cutout for the logo, it's just straight across, but there's instructions for both, doing it with or without. Okay, pattern piece O is the interior slip pocket. It's one piece. It's folded in half the long way, like this. P is the trim for that slip pocket. And then Q is your strap. It's important to note that the strap that's going, so this is a double-sided strap. You don't have to do this either. You could do a regular strap. Double-sided strap, when we put it together, it should be 1 inch, maybe like that. 1 inch, the outside should be 1 inch longer, so that when you fold it up, encasing the D-ring, it's not super bulky right there. It's just, it's thinner. And it's, I don't know, I think it lays nicer. That's up to you if you want to do that. I forgot to add that you need 2 zippers. You have one zipper that's 12 inches, and this one was 8.5. One zipper pulls to go with them. I'll just quickly go over the hardware actually. So you're going to have some sort of turn lock or flip lock, something for that front flap. One magnetic snap. I'm using the 18 millimeter. You could do smaller if you wanted. I'm doing the chains. So it's like a shorter material or fabric part of the strap, and then on each side of that, it's a chain. It's a 8-inch chain. So that'll go on either side of the strap, and then the material goes in the middle, and these hook onto the strap connectors. 4 D-rings. I have 8 rivets and 2 zipper pulls. So that's it for hardware, other than if you were going to put a bag tag on. Okay, let's get started. So this is a little out of the pattern order, but I just really wanted to quilt, so I did this pattern this time instead of the starburst like the other one. That's the starburst pattern I used on this one, the first one I made. I used 60-degree lines. I found the center. I made sure that the diamonds connected down the center. Okay, so I just really quick did the quilting on this. I also fused my Peltex to the back. Okay. So the first step in the pattern is doing our slip pockets, our exterior slip pockets. We're going to lay the lining on top of the exterior panel and clip in place around the top and sew it together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'll go to the machine and take care of that, and I'll be right back. Okay, I have no idea how this happened, but somehow a bunch of the videos that I just did got deleted. So now I'm going to try to explain this going back. So what we did, what's missing is the installation for the magnetic snap. So what I did was find my center down the middle here, and I measured 5 inches down and centered, and I put a little dot there, and then I took the magnetic snap washer, placed that the centered over that dot. You draw your 2 lines that are on the washer, and then you cut slits in those 2 lines, and then you take a piece of stabilizer. I used just some more Decaville. You cut it about that big, make your 2 slits in this as well. You're going to push the snap through. It's going to be the male side of the snap. You push that through from the front side of the fabric. Put your Decaville on, then your washer, and then open your prongs up and cover it with duct tape. So then for the female part of the snap, how I did it is I laid my panel over this, lining up the edges and the bottom along all sides, and then take a marker. I just used a dry erase marker, and you get some ink on the little bump on that snap, and then set your fabric down on it and push on it a little bit so that the ink transfers onto the side. Find your little marking, and you can darken it if you want. I darkened it just to make sure that I didn't lose it, because I'm using kind of crazy fabric. So you can open up the exterior away from the interior lining fabric. So you're just working with the lining fabric. And then you're going to do the same thing you did before. Center the washer over your marking, cut the 2 slits, put your magnetic snap in through the lining side, flip it over. Your exterior will be folded up out of the way. You're going to put your Decaville on it or some sort of stabilizer, and then the washer. Open up the prongs and use duct tape to close it in. And then once that's done, I put this front slip pocket panel back on here, let it snap in place like so, and then I just basted around the sides. So this one's done. Then we did the flap, so let me get that. Okay, so the flap, it's already done. So you put right sides together, sew around the outside, leaving this top part open, and then turn through. And then you can just use like a turning tool to push out the seams. And then you top stitch around the edges, and then you're going to install your flip lock or turn lock or whatever thumb lock, whatever you're using for the flap. This is the one that I chose. I've never done one of these before. It was interesting trying to put it together. I thought this part was not going to be cut out, and it has to be cut out for the placement. Otherwise, it's like raised up and it don't look right. So this is done, and we can set this aside and move on to the next step. Okay, so this is step 6. We're going to create our front exterior panel and front slip pocket pieces. We need our pieces B and C, the top and bottom exterior panels. We're going to start with the bottom. Let's see. Like this. If you have directional fabric, it's a good idea to make sure it's the right way. We're going to mark our centers I like to do a little tiny clip, but I'll do both for now, just because. Okay, now we're going to put our flap down like this, because when we flip it up, when it's sewn on here and it's flipped up, that's how we want it to be, so that it can go over our pocket and connect to that front slip pocket part. So first thing we're going to do is center this. I need to find the center of my flap as well. I'll just make a little clip there. I'm going to line this up so it's on the center area and flip it in place. I also want to make sure that this is going to be like a 90-degree angle, like that this part is straight up and down. You really want to make sure of that, because if you flip it up, it's a little crooked, you're going to notice it. I'm just going to double check, because that does not look like the center of the flap. 4 5/8. Not 4 5/8. 4 3/4. Okay. It's 11/16 then. Okay, so that's in place. And I'll clip that in place, and then I want to make sure that it's also the same on the bottom, so I know that it's centered and it's straight up and down, just in case this top edge wasn't cut perfectly straight. So I'm going to go ahead and base that on with a 1/8 inch seam allowance. Oh, wow. First time I sew on camera and I break a needle. That's fantabulous. One moment. Okay, sorry about that. Needles changed. Okay, so here's the next piece. We want to flip this down like this. We're going to clip across the top and then sew across this top seam at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I will be right back. Okay, once that's done, we are going to flip it up, and our flap is going to go up, and our seam allowance is going to go down underneath this bottom panel. And then we are going to top stitch on this bottom panel at a 1/8 inch seam allowance. Make sure you lengthen your stitch length, and I'm going to do that and be right back. Okay, and that's what that looks like. You can barely see it because of, there you go. And so this will go down like this in front of this part, like this. So now we need to put our other part of the turn lock on this front panel. Okay, so for this next part, the first thing you want to do is clip on the front slip pocket on top of this piece with your flap, your exterior panel with your flap, and then line this up the best you can. I flipped it over and measured from side to side to make sure that it was the same on both sides. You can also check up here where it's folded to make sure that looking straight down on top of it, that it's not over to one side or the other. And once you're pretty sure you got it straight, I just took my leather pen and drew a marking in the center there. And that's my marking. So you can now take this off. And we need to cut that hole, or the slits for the turn lock. So we can set this aside. We're just going to be working with the exterior. You don't want to cut through, or you don't want to cut your slits through your lining. Take your piece of hardware and figure out where it's going to go through on your washer. So mine's the first one and then the second to last one. So I'm going to center that on my piece here so that it looks good. I'm going to mark those two slit holes right there on the edge. And then take an X-Acto knife or a seam ripper if you want, and cut those slits. Okay. Push it through. I'm going to flip it over. Make those same markings on a piece of stabilizer. I'm going to mark first and the second to last. Cut those same two slits. Okay, put that over top of your hardware. Oops, come on. Then you can slide your washer on. And I like to use a small pair of pliers for this, but you can go out with these prongs or in, your choice. I like to go out on ones like these just because I think it gives it a little more stability. Come on. Make sure I didn't over push them from the front. I don't want to see them prongs from the front. Okay. It doesn't seem quite flat enough though. Push it on my table here to make sure that they're on there and looking good. Okay. And now I like to cover the installation with a piece of duct tape. And just press that in place. And you can put your panel back together. Okay. You take your back exterior panel again and take the front slip pocket panel. You're going to reline it up with your center markings. Put it in place. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and baste around these three sides at a 1/8 inch seam allowance, and then this is completed. We're going to be calling this the front exterior panel from now on. We can lock this in place. Oh, that's cute. Yeah, that's cute. Okay, I'm going to do that and I'll be back for the next step. Really quick, this is what the finished panel should look like. Okay, so this is step number 9 now. We're going to be making our bottom panel. I changed the bottom panel from the original. The original is this bag, and it has the starburst pattern. When I made this one, I started by making like this small X right here in the center, and then I just did like, I think it was 1 to 1.5 inches all the way around in between the lines until it looked like a good starburst. And then you just sew right over your markings. For this one, I found my center, and then I found the center the long way. These are 60-degree lines that are 2 inches spaced apart. So I made lines going this way, starting at the center point, 2 inches apart, and then make it centered this way. I found the center on those lines that I just created, and then when I did the 60-degree, I made sure that these lines intersect at that center point. Then it gives you a diamond pattern that is centered across the whole panel. And then I basted around the outside once I was done to seal in the quilt lines. And when I was done, I fused my Peltex to the back. You do not have to fuse it. I didn't in my last one. I was just trying it on this one. It fused okay. So now we are going to put our purse feet on. So placement for purse feet are centered. So I need to go ahead and find my center again. So this is an 11-inch panel. Slightly smaller now that it's quilted. It's not even an 1/8 smaller, it's like a 16th smaller, so it's okay. So I centered it, and it's 5.5, 5.5. Draw my line. Okay, so that's the center. We need that for our center purse feet. Otherwise, we're going to line up our ruler, a 1-inch block on the edge here, and the purse feet go right there, 1 inch up or down and over. So line up the 1-inch part of the ruler, and on our line it's going to be 1 inch in, 1 inch from this corner, 1 inch from this corner, all the corners. Okay, oh, one more. That mark was actually exactly 1 inch up. Okay, so then we need to poke our holes, and I'm just going to double check. It shouldn't poke through any of my stitching. Center that on there. Check the back. It's not in my stitching. That's good. And poke through. Give it a little twist. Okay, poked all the way through. Good. Center it on this. And poke through. Good, it's just going to miss the stitching on this one. Looks good so far on all of them. Okay, So now we're going to put our posts. If you're using riveted purse feet like I am, just stick your post through all the holes. Otherwise, if you're using the ones with the prongs, you would push it up from the other side. And then if you have the ones with the prongs and you poke it up through and you fold them down and they look like they might be in your seam allowance, you can always take a nippers like that's on the pliers and nip them down a little bit, the prong parts down a little bit so that they're not in your seam allowances. For these ones you can turn them side to side, but on the corner here, this one could end up being in your way depending on the purse feet you're using. So now we just have to press them in place. Line it up on there, center it, and press. This is what it should look like when your purse feet are on, and we're going to move on to the next step. Okay, this is step 10. For this, we're going to need our strap connectors, pattern piece I, and our side panels, pattern piece E. Well, first thing we need to do is make a line down the center. Run some double-sided tape down the center and fold the raw edges in to meet the center line. And then we can top stitch down both sides at a 1/8 inch seam allowance. I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I will show you when they're completed. Really quick, I'd like to note that I did not follow my very own instructions, and I cut these in half before. In the pattern, I have these not cut in half yet, so you can just make one strap thing and sew it down the sides and everything, and then when it's done, you just cut it in half. It makes for a little less time, makes it go a little faster, but when I was cutting this out, I wasn't thinking, and I did it this way, so just so you know and aren't confused. Okay, here's what it should look like with the centers folded in. And then after you sew it, okay, now that we have the two strap connectors done, we need to make our hidden connectors. So I'll show you with one of them. We're going to start from the back. We need to find our center. I'll do it on the bottom too. I'm going to need that later for the construction of the bag. Okay, we got top and bottom done. So now I'm just going to run a line on my markings from top to bottom, so I know exactly where my center is. Okay, we need to mark 2 inches down on this line. There's the 2-inch mark right here, and we're going to make a line that is, what is this one? This one's 3/4 of an inch. Okay, so we're going to draw a line that's 2 inches down from the top. We'll center our ruler 2 inches down and 3/4 of an inch wide, because our straps are 3/4 of an inch wide. And then we're going to go up just a 1/4 inch from there and make another line that's a 1/2 inch wide. So it would be a 1/4 inch on either side of our center line. And then we're going to draw our little legs down from there. Now, what we're going to cut is not this line. We're going to cut up across the top and back down with our X-Acto knife. Start at the bottom, cut up, and it's better to be a scant smaller than it is to be a scant bigger. You want it to fit nice and snug so you don't see any gaps or holes when it's complete. Okay, so your little flap, this is the shape we're going for. So first thing we're going to do is take one of our strap connectors. If you're looking at it from the front, you want this side face up and this face down. We want to see the back side of our strap connector. And we're going to push it through this hole. And you want about half of it hanging out the back and half of it hanging out the front. Just a little bit more than half, I would say, hanging out the front. Like that. And we want to make sure that this is straight up and down, like 90-degree angle here, you know, straight up and down, as straight as we can get it. When it looks good, I'm going to go ahead and clip that in place. And go over to the back side. Now, we're going to sew right across that top line that we just cut, only staying on our strap. You don't want to go over. You want to make sure that you're just right on the strap. So I start just a hair before the strap and stop just a hair before the strap ends. And we're going to sew about 1/8 of an inch or less from your cut mark. I'll do that and then I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, see, we just sewed right there. Right there. So we can take these off. Grab your D-ring. Slide your D-ring on. Make sure the D-ring bump part is facing up. And then we're going to take this end and slide that down into your hole. And we're going to pull on it a little bit so that it's nice and tight. So it's not loose like this. We don't want it loose. You see that? We want it nice and tight. Not too tight where it buckles or anything, but you know, nice and tight. Okay, now we're going to flip it over. Making sure that the two straps are lined up on side to side. And we're going to fold this back out of the way. And now is where the zipper foot comes in handy. I'm going to swap out my foot for the zipper foot, and we're going to sew right on that line we drew, or as close to it as we can, in a straight line, staying only on our straps from here to there. And I like to backstitch. I go over it maybe twice. I did that on the top as well, because this is where all the weight of your bag is going to be held on, and it's nice to have a little extra stability right there. So I'm going to clip this so my straps don't move. And I'm going to swap out my zipper foot quick and sew down this line, and then I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, that's done. I did a couple extra lines right here just to make it really sturdy. That's what the finished one looks like. So now we just need to do the same exact thing to the other one. Okay, they're both done now, so the next thing we need to do is install the rivets. I will make the markings on here and put them in real quick, and then I'll show you when I'm done. Okay, so for the markings, for the markings, I did the first one 3/8 inch down, and then the second one 1/2 inch down from that. So I'm gonna go ahead and poke those holes and put my rivets in, and then we'll be on to the next step. Okay guys, this is what it looks like when the rivets are set in place, and we are just about done. We're going to start putting this exterior together. So starting at step 11, we're going to grab out our front and back exterior panels and our bottom panel. Okay, so we have our two panels. We're going to start with our back panel first. You can decide if you want this end or this end touching the back or the front. So either this way or this way. Mine's the same, it doesn't really matter, so I'm going to do it this way. So if you haven't already, you can find your centers. I have mine marked already. We're going to go ahead and clip along this bottom seam and then sew it at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, once we have that sewn, we're going to flip it up like this so that the seam allowance is going towards the bottom panel, and we are going to top stitch along this bottom panel at a 1/8 inch seam allowance. Now that's done, we are going to grab our front panel. We're going to lay it face up, and we're going to put our bottom panel face down on top of it, center it, clip it in place, and sew this at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, now that we've done that, we should have one long panel piece. We need to sew on our sides. One more thing to note before sewing the side panels on is I forgot to do this in the step where we put the rivet feet on. If you want, you can cover those installations with some duct tape. I forgot and I caught it right now, so I did it right now. We need to sew on our sides. So to do that, you can do it a couple of ways. So you can either just clip them in place one at a time and sew all the way up and around, or you can clip them in place like this and sew just along this edge on this side, and then do the same for the other one, so that that bottom piece won't move, or it'll stay in place as you sew your corners. So either way it works. I think I'm going to probably start by just sewing this little bit before doing the rest. So I'll sew these two little sides here, and then I'll come back and show you what that looks like. Okay, so I clipped this in place. This is the side panel on top of the base. You clip it with your centers together, and then I measured 1/2 inch from the outside edge of the side panel on both sides, and you're going to sew between this line and this line, and then stop. And then you're going to do that on the other side as well, and then I'll show you what that looks like. Anyway, I did another row right there, we go, right next to it, just to make sure my stitches don't pop when I flip it up. So I'm going to do the same thing on this side with this panel. Okay, when clipping the sides, I like, now that this is in place, I like to start up at the top and match up the corners and clip those in place first. Okay, this is what it looks like all clipped around there with my 2000 clips. I'm gonna start sewing this with the gusset side up. We can repeat these steps for the other side. I also want to mention that if you just cut into your bottom panel right there at the corner and cut off this extra little corner of bulk, like it looks like this, and I just cut that little triangle off, that helps around the corner. And also if you clip into the side panel right here, I like to clip in there and take this little triangle out. Let me get it out quick. There we go. This little triangle, you just cut that right out of there, and that helps this corner lay nicer. I forgot to do it with this corner before I sewed, and it gets bulky right there, and so it just doesn't quite lay as nice. As soon as I finish this other side right here, I'm gonna go back over it and stitch right along next to this to make sure that my seams don't pop, my stitches don't pop when I turn it out. I'm not going to start all the way at the top. I'm going to start maybe like 1.5 inches to 2 inches down, and then just go down this side. And we already did it across the bottom, so just a second row of stitching is all I'm going to do right there. So let me get that done, and then I'll be right back. I just wanted to show this really quick. When you get down to the bottom corner and you're sewing, your bottom wants to go in like that. Don't let it go in. You want to reach your hand in, spin it around, reach your hand in there, and push it out. So when you get down here to where you're going to connect the bottom row of stitching or the side row of stitching to your previous bottom row of stitching, you don't get a weird pinch in that corner, and it will stitch over the bottom panel weird if it's poked in. So make sure that this is going out, this bottom panel is going out when you get down to the corner to connect these two rows. Okay, now it's time to look inside your bag, make sure that your corners and your sides feel good. Feel in there all around, make sure it's all good, that you don't need to or want to re-sew anything. And if it feels good, you can go ahead and trim down all your edges. Don't trim down this top piece because you're going to want to butterfly it open in the end when we sew the exterior to the lining. So start right about where you started your second row of stitching and trim this down to 1/4 inch all the way around both sides. You can grab the bottom as well if there's some bulk down there you want to get rid of. And then the exterior is done. You can turn it right side out and we'll start on the lining. I will turn it right side out and show you real quick before we start the lining. Okay, just so you can see how much I trimmed down, it's about 1/4 inch, and then I cut real nice and close to those edges, those corners. You want to get as much bulk out of them corners as you can, and I also cut some little triangles, some like little relief cuts out of the corners, so when I turn it out, it'll lay nice. You can see them when I spread it, but you can see I just cut some little triangles out of those corners. Okay, time to turn the bag out. Okay, now that it's turned out, I like to go around my seams and just pinch them all to where I want them to lay. So when I set the bag up, it sits how it should. And this is what we're working with. Ooh, I like her. She's pretty. Oh yeah, I like this. I think I'm gonna do another bag with just black and this green color. It's so pretty. This green color with the black. Yep, that might have to be my next bag. Okay, moving on. We are going to make the interior. I should mention, if you're using an industrial, it's probably time to check your bobbin. And if you made it this far, it also might be time to take a little break now that you got all this done. This was the majority of the hardest parts of this bag, and it's pretty much downhill from here. Okay, we're going to start step 11. We're going to create the interior lining zipper pocket. I'm going to be doing the zipper overlay, so if you're doing it too, you can skip down in the pattern instructions down to where it says the zipper overlay instructions. So for this, we're going to need one of our lining pieces. We're going to need our zipper overlay and our 2 zipper pocket pieces and our smaller zipper, the 8.5 inch zipper. So first we're going to start with assembling the pocket piece. So you're going to take one of your pocket pieces, lay it down face up. You're going to put your zipper on top of that, also face up. You can sew that on at just at an 1/8 inch seam allowance. So go ahead and do that, and then I'll show you the very next step. Okay, once you have that sewn on to the top, we're gonna flip it up like this so that that seam allowance is going down and you're seeing the back side here. And now we're gonna take your other pocket piece and we're gonna lay the zipper right side up once again on top, centering it and clipping along the top, and then we're going to sew this on also as a 1/8 inch seam allowance. When this is done, this is what it should look like with your zipper facing up. Both of your pocket pieces should be facing down. We want this seam allowance to lay down flat, so I'm going to use 1/8 inch double-sided tape in this seam so that I can stick it down flat, just so it's nice and flat and out of the way. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that now. Okay, this is what it should look like when you have that done, and once it's all stuck down and ready to go, you can set that aside. Okay, now we want to do our zipper overlay. First thing we're going to do is find our centers. Finger press it. And then I'm going to find the center of my overlay, also by folding it in half, but I don't want to pinch it too hard. I don't want it to permanently stay that way. So just give it a little pinch. Okay, I just put 2 rows of sticky tape down the long sides. I'm going to line my ruler up at the 2 inch mark. Now we're going to line this up at our center markings, our pinch mark that we did before. Just make sure that this bottom part, because the center's cut out, it can accidentally bow. You don't want it to like bow like that. So you just kind of like let it plop down in place. And I'm just going to double check that the center is a 1/2 inch. It should be right at a 1/2 inch, just like the edges. And it is. So we're good. So now we're going to sew around the very outside edge, not the inside, the very outside edge at a 1/8 inch seam allowance, top stitching. If you want to make it look a little more professional, you can not do the back stitch and instead start and stop in the same needle hole. So you can then flip it over and tug on your tails. So you're going to want to leave the tails long. So you can tug on the tails and pull your strings to the back and then tie them off. And then you won't have any back stitching on your finished product. Okay, just to make sure it goes exactly down in the hole that I started in. Once that's done, pull it out. Show you what that looks like. We're going to flip it over. We're going to pull on these strings. I pulled my first one, and I'll show you this little tiny loop right here pops up. I'm just going to grab the loop and pull on it, and that just pulled one of my strings that was in the front. It pulled it to the back so I can tie it off. And pull on this other one and pull that up. Okay, so now we just need to tie these together. Of course I didn't do it how I usually do it. I usually cut them at different lengths, the ones I start with and then the ones that I end with at different lengths, so when you pull them through the back, you know the two short ones go together and the two long ones go together. I like to do 3 knots. I'll cut these short too. And grab the lighter. I'll fold back my material out of the way so these are just sticking up. I'm going to melt them down. This lighter sucks apparently. Needs some new fluid, I think. Okay. They're melted down, melted in place. And now we need to cut out this lining in between where we stitched. So I'm just going to kind of fold it in half like this and make a snip and start cutting. I like to cut down this way first and then down this way, and then flip it over to the back side and cut it away. First thing I want to do is disconnect that double-sided tape. from the lining so that I can cut it better. So now you have this hole and you have it about that far cut away from the inside, or the inside of the cutout here. Okay, so now we need to put our pocket in. So first thing I'm going to do is add my zipper pull so I don't screw up and sew it together without it, which, believe it or not, happens sometimes. Okay, just so you can see what that looks like. I don't know if it was such a good angle from before, but there's that. Okay, so now we're going to take the lining pieces that we just created, and we're going to run some double-sided tape along the top, along this top and this bottom seam. So I'm going to do that real quick. Okay, so you want to remove the tape one at a time. I'm going to start with the top. And we want to center this zipper inside this window. And so once we have it in place up top where we like it, and you can see that the zipper hangs over on both sides. You see that? Okay. So I'm going to take the tape off the bottom part now. So move this zipper pull out of the way. And press this down in place to where it looks good. Where that is. Okay, now we're going to sew around the inside, this inside box right around the zipper. And you want to make sure that your lining panels, one is facing up and out of the way, and the other one is down out of the way. Like this. Should be all the way open. And then we're just going to sew around that box real quick, and we'll be right back. I also wanted to mention that we're going to be doing the same thing as before with the not back stitching and pulling through to the back and tying them off. Also, as you go up over this zipper, you might want to use a folded up piece of material or a hump jumper to go over that. Otherwise, you might get a smaller stitch if it can't get over that bump, or it could end up like tearing up your vinyl a little bit as it goes over those teeth. If a entire size of one stitch is going to be too far, I like to shorten my stitch length one or two so that when it comes down where you want it. A size 5 stitch is what I was using, and that would have been too big right there. Also, when you're turning corners, you want to make sure your needle is in the on its way up position. That is done. I'll pull these out, and this time these are going to be the same equal length, so I know that those are the ones that need to be tied together. Snip those off. Fold my material out of the way. We're just going to burn those quick. Okay, done and done. Okay, so now what we have to do is close up the pocket. So we're going to fold the top down, and this other one will be longer. So what we're going to do is pull this away from that double-sided tape. We're going to clip the sides. And the other side, make sure that they line up nicely. Pull it away from that tape. Clip. Clip. Now that it's clipped, we're going to trim this other panel piece, zipper pocket piece, so that it's the same length. We're not cutting the lining, just the pocket piece. Okay, now we're going to leave this bottom open for turning out later. So what you can do is fold up these bottoms. You can iron them in place if you want, or you can just fold it up. I'm just going to fold it up for now. You want them to match the top and the bottom pieces. I'm just going to clip along as I go too, just to hold it in place. I might iron it after I'm done sewing this together. Okay. We are going to sew down both sides and not the bottom. I have this upside down, so it's not the bottom. The top's already sealed in with that fold, so we don't have to do anything with that. We're just gonna sew this way. So, best way to do this, I think, is to turn it face up and fold your lining back out of the way. So with the zipper, I like to get real close to the seam on the zipper, and then I kind of veer out a little bit as I come down. Okay, turn it around, do the same thing on the other side, only it's opposite this way. We're going to start at the bottom and work our way towards the zipper. I'm going to start at a smaller seam allowance down here. And if you want, you can trim this down. Okay, and since I just cut the zipper tape, I have to reseal it. So I'm going to fold back my material out of the way and reburn this seam really good. Now, this is complete. I'm gonna go iron this bottom edge so that it stays folded up nice for me later, and then we'll be moving on to the next step. Okay, this is the next step. This is step 12. For this step, we're gonna do the other lining panel piece. So we want to get that piece out, your other lining. We need to get pattern piece O, which is the interior slip pocket, out, and also pattern piece P, the interior slip pocket trim. Okay, so this lighting thing was really bugging me, so I went and snatched one of my husband's lights. So voila, we have light. Okay, so we're gonna take our our slip pocket panel. We want to turn it right sides together, clip it in place, and we're gonna sew down both of these sides at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that real quick, and I'll be right back. Okay, once you have that sewn, we're gonna trim down the corners on all 4 edges so that we get nice pointy corners when we turn them out. So I'm gonna go ahead and flip this out and I'll show you what the next step is. Quick note, I just wanted to mention that I only did interfacing on one side of it. One doesn't have interfacing and one does. You can do it on the whole piece if you like. I forgot to interface this, and so when I just sewed it right now I remembered, and so I just chose to interface the one side. I don't think it's going to need more than that. When I turn this right side out and use it as the pocket, I'm going to use the side with the interfacing as the side that faces out. So when you look into the bag, the side that you see is going to be the side with the interfacing. And now that I have it turned out, I'm going to go take it to the ironing board and iron those seams. Okay, now that's done. Now we need to make our top trim. So we're going to take our trim piece and flip it over to the wrong side. We're going to draw a line down the center and then put some double-sided sticky tape along that center line and fold our raw edges in. Okay, so once I fold them in, I'm going to leave the tiniest little gap right there to account for the bulk when we fold it over our piece. It'll fold a little bit nicer doing that. So now we're going to take our pocket piece, and the top is the folded edge. And we want to line this up and fold it over our top edge. And you're going to leave, you want to center it. So there should be just about a 1/4 inch, 1/8 to a 1/4 inch on either side of this top trim. So I'm going to fold it over and clip that in place real quick. Also, you can use double-sided sticky tape to help hold it in place. Mine keeps trying to open on me, so I'm going to run a line of tape on this side and this side, each side of that center, so that I can line it up good and stick it in place. So I'll do the back bottom part first, and once that's aligned, I'll fold it over and stick the top part on. Okay, you might have to play with this a little bit to get it right. You want to make sure that this amount is the same as this amount on the back and the front, because when you sew this, you want to be able to make sure you can catch both sides. You do want a 1/4 inch from each end, so if it's not a 1/4 inch, you can just pull this fabric down back out of the way and trim a little bit off. I'm going to do it anyway because I want to make sure that these end pieces are exactly lined up, because this is going to be the edge that we see. So now that side's a 1/4 inch. I'm going to do the same to this side, trimming the smallest amount off, which also evens it out. Make it a clip right here. Okay, so now we got a 1/4 inch hanging off of this side and this side on our pocket. See that? And it's even all the way across the back and the front. So now we're going to sew this onto our pocket at a 1/8 inch seam allowance, making sure that we catch the pocket and both sides of that trim. Okay, so once it's done, it'll look like this. Come on, focus. There's the front and the back. We cut both sides. Okay, so now we need to sew this onto our lining. Okay, first thing we want to do is find our centers. So we're going to fold it in half and give it a nice good crease. Whoops, there goes my nail. Right down the middle. And we're also going to find our center on our pocket. You're just going to line up these edges right here. And the edges of this, and these should also match up, and pinch it so you can see where that's at. And actually I'm gonna press this too, make it easier. Okay, so we're gonna line this up. Okay, so we're gonna center it, but in order to place it down, I'm gonna run a line of double-sided tape down this edge and this edge, because we're gonna end up folding it under and sewing it down that way. First, you need to fold up this bottom edge. It needs to get folded up on the inside of this pocket, well, on the inside of the fabric on the wrong side. Fold it up about a 1/4 inch. If that's too small of an amount for you, you could do 3/8. So I'm gonna go iron this a 1/4 inch up on both sides, and then I like to run some double-sided tape along that edge and then stick the front and the back pieces together so they don't move when I'm stitching. So I'm gonna go iron and do the sticky tape, and then I will be right back. Okay, so when I folded this under, I left the back side the tiniest bit shorter than the front so that you don't see the back pocket from the front side, or the back of that from the front side. So when you see the front, you just want to see the front seam, not the back seam too. So now I have to stick that in place. Okay, now that I have the bottom stuck shut, I ran some double-sided tape down either side here and found the center once again. We're going to line this up. You decide which side you want to be your outside, this side or the other side. Line it up, and then we're going to fold these sides under that 1/4 inch and stick it in place. Be sure to keep it at that 2 inches down from the top, and you don't want your double-sided tape to show. You sewed this at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, so it should fold like right at that 1/4 inch seam allowance, making it a little easier to fold over. I might just do this real quick though. Fold it down that little seam. Make sure it's still lined up at the top. And that is our placement for our pocket. So once you have it folded, your trim should end even on both sides. And we're gonna put some rivets up there just to hold it in place better. But when you sew this, you're going to sew it at an 1/8 inch seam allowance, down the side, across the bottom, and back up the other side. When you're at the top here by the trim, remember to back stitch a couple of times just to give it a little extra security. Even though we are putting a rivet there, it's helpful just to have that extra little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and sew that down, and we'll be right back. Okay, this is what it looks like when it's done. We're going to go ahead and put some rivets right there in both of these corners. So I'm going to do that real quick, and then I'll show you what that looks like. I also would like to note that when you're punching your holes, make sure you don't punch through your stitches. And also, if you're using a material that frays like I am, use fray check in those holes, or just a dab of glue, of some sort of permanent glue. If I'm using glue or fray check, I do on the front and the back. I'm going to add a little tiny on the front side and the back side. I'm going to add like a little drop of glue just to make sure that that won't fray over time. Okay, that's what that looks like, and now this part is all done. We're going to move on to the next step. Okay, on to step 13. We are making the recessed zipper panel. First thing we want to do is get our zipper tape prepped. So on one end, we are going to do a 90-degree turn on this. So you just spread these apart. You can just pinch right here, about a 1/2 inch down, and then fold the teeth over, bringing that folded pinched edge up to meet those teeth, just like that. Can you see that good? Fix the lighting here a little bit. So that folded edge that I just pinched, I pulled it up to meet the zipper teeth to make it do a 90-degree angle. The back looks like that. It has like a little triangle. So some people like to pin this in place before they stitch down the side. I just melt it. So I'm going to take my lighter and I'm going to melt this edge and pinch it together. Let me do that real quick. Okay, so it's melted in place right there. You can see how it looks on the back and the front, and this is just melted in place just for now. We're going to sew down this edge right here really close to the edge to secure it in place in 1 second. So just do the same thing to the other side and then stitch down that little tiny edge to hold it in place. So it should look like this when you have both sides done. If you're unsure that you can get both sides to be equal, before you fold, you could measure a 1/2 inch down from the top. Here, I'll show you on this side. You would measure 1/2 inch down from this top, make a line going across, all the way across. And that ensures that your fold will be exactly matching each other. So let's say the line's right here, all the way across. That will ensure that when I pinch exactly on that line and go like that, that they'll be exactly the same. Now, when you make your line, you actually don't want to draw all the way across. You want to do like on the edges so that you don't see it when you're done. So in your seam allowance, you want to make your line. So line, no line, line. And then pinch right at that line, pull that folded edge up to your zipper teeth. See? Fold it up to the zipper teeth, pinch in place like that. Melt or sew your edges. And then do the same to the other side. Double check when you're done. you can kind of like push your teeth kind of back together where they're going to line up, and make sure that the folds, it's like correct, that they're both at a 90-degree angle, and that they'll line up and look good. Okay, so now I just need to sew down both those sides real quick. Okay, and this is what that looks like. Okay, moving on. Okay guys, so now that the zipper is all prepped and ready to go, I'm going to set that aside. We're going to take out our zipper panel pieces, which is pattern piece K. I'm going to turn these to the back side and run some 1/4 inch double-sided tape down all 4 pieces on both short edges. Okay, once you got the tape ran, you're going to take 2 of your panel pieces, the exterior one and your lining. Mine are both the same, but one of them has interfacing on it. This would be the exterior and this is the lining. We're going to remove the tape on all the edges and fold them in that 1/4 inch and make sure that they are even, lined up even on both sides. Just so you can see what that's starting to look like, you're going to fold that over on each side and clip in place. Okay, once they're perfectly lined up, so that they are exactly the same length. One second. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, once they're exactly the same length, we're going to take our exterior panel and we're going to line up our zipper 1/4 inch from the left hand side right here. So you want a 1/4 inch gap right here. So you're just going to line this up and clip all along here. And yes, there should be some extra here. We're going to leave a tail and put a zipper cap on it, zipper end on it. So let me clip that in place, and then I'm going to baste it on with a 1/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, and that's what that looks like. You also want to make sure you don't go off the end of the zipper panel and onto your zipper. That will be seen in the end if you do. Okay, next step, we're going to take our other zipper panel, the interior or the lining part of it, and we're going to lay that down right on top of it. Once again, making sure that those ends are exactly lined up on both sides. And once it is, we're going to sew this on. Now, usually you do a 3/8 inch seam allowance. But if you don't feel like changing out your zipper foot, just get as close to that as you can. So we're going to do that right now. I showed you wrong, actually. We're making a zipper sandwich. So this is the exterior, this is the zipper, face down. Your exterior is face up, your zipper is face down on top of it. We're going to clip our interior right on top of that, making a zipper sandwich. Now that you have these clipped in place, you want to just double check that the ends are lining up good. You might have to do, let me see. Oh, that one looks good. This one's a smidge off. So I'm actually gonna fold that in just a touch and fix that. And when we start sewing, we're not just gonna start on the zipper like we did when we basted it. We're gonna sew on the panel from end to end at as close to a 3/8 inch seam allowance as you can make it. Just to show you really quick the difference between changing out your foot and not, it started slipping right here. I started at 3/8 and then it started slipping right here. So I changed out my foot and it makes all the difference. It's really not that big of a deal. For me, it's just one screw, so I don't mind changing it out. I thought I could get away with it, but nope. Okay, so now we're gonna flip this out and open like this, exposing our zipper. Like this. We want to pull the zipper away from the two panel pieces, lining these two panel pieces up in the edge like this, just like that. And then we're going to top stitch along the zipper on the panel pieces at a 1/8 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to go ahead and do that quick. Oh, also, if you want to get rid of some bulk, right here, this little piece, I'm going to actually cut this at an angle, not all the way to the stitches, probably about a 1/16 away. I'm going to start there and cut this way so you won't see the cut, but this bulk will be out of there on both sides. This one is top stitched in place, but you can actually pull it a little bit and that'll come free, and then you can just cut that off. That's if you want to. I'm going to do that though. So if you choose to trim it down like I did, you can see that I cut this at an angle right here, and then I cut this inner one straight across. So there's only one piece of fabric for bulk here and not two, so that when we fold it up and over, there's not a ton of bulk right there, right in that inside area there. So I stretch it just a hair, so when I sew it, it kind of covers that little spot. It'll pinch down like that and you won't see that little spot too much. Okay, so I'm gonna finish doing the folding the zipper out and top stitching. Okay then, and before you start stitching, top stitching, you want to make sure that on both sides it's pulled taut. Make sure that there's no bubble or buckling on one side or the other, and if they both look good, you can go ahead and top stitch. We're going to start top stitching on this side. We're going to go down the side, down the zipper, back down this side, and then you can close up the back part. Okay, let's try that. Okay, this is what your panel piece should look like. And we're going to do the same exact steps for this other side of the zipper. Also, side note, when you're folding down your other pieces for the other side here, you want to make sure that the panel is going to be equal to the first one you did. You don't want them all different sized and wonky looking, so just make sure that the first piece that you do, you can measure it up against this. This is the exterior piece. Make sure that it matches that before you sew it in place. Okay, this part's all done. I also wanted to say that you should probably change your foot back out before doing the top stitching. It gives a better top stitch. Okay, so now this is done. We're going to put on our zipper now. So let me grab that. Now when we're putting our zipper on, we want to see which tooth on which side is going to be on top. So if you can see, the one on the left side is going to be on top of the one on the right. You want to make sure that when you're putting your zipper on that it stays that way so that your 90-degree angle over here lines up properly as it should when the zipper's on. Otherwise you'll have to take it back off and readjust. Okay, this is how it should look when the zipper pulls on. So when you pull it all the way up, these are straight across. If yours are off a little bit, you can just adjust putting the pull on by putting an extra tooth. I'll show you. Mine was actually, I thought it only needed one tooth above this side, but when I put it on, it wasn't quite how I liked it, so I ended up putting 2 teeth above the right, and that made it sit flush, like straight across, so that everything lined up good. Okay, so now, next step, we are going to put our zipper facing pieces onto our zipper panel. So to do this, we need to find the centers. So find the centers on all the pieces. We'll start with the facings. See, I clipped the smallest little tiny triangle out of it. Okay, do that on both of those, and I should have already put it on this. I don't know why I forgot to mark centers beforehand. So I need to do it now. Excuse me. So now you can just see the little, a little tiny cut that I made right there. And also right there. Okay. These are going to go face down, centered, and clip in place. Once you have it clipped in place, you are going to sew from your panel, your zipper panel, down to the other edges of your zipper panel at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Once you have the one side done, you can go ahead and do that to the other side. And I will be back when that is done. Nope. I spoke too soon. We are not doing the 1/4 inch right now. We are basting this in place with a 1/8 inch seam allowance. Sorry. Okay, just so you can see what that looks like. Basted on both sides. That's what it's gonna look like. Ooh, exciting. Okay. Now I'm gonna put on my zipper end, and this part will be finished until we sew it on our lining in the very next step. Okay. So this is the zipper end I'm using. It gets put on the end of the zipper, and there's this little tiny screw right here that gets screwed in place on the back side. So if you don't actually have a zipper end cap, you could just cut a small piece of coordinating fabric and put it over the end of your zipper to make it look nice. You know, fold under the edges if you want, or leave it raw edge if you're using vinyl like I am. Or if it's cotton, you'd fold under the edge so you have a nice folded edge right here. You would top stitch that in place so it'd be folded under on this side as well to cover this end. Okay, so to do this, I'm going to fold my zipper down like this, and I like to make sure that both sides of this little triangle that I'm folding is gonna match. So what I'm saying is you don't want to have one end like short like that and then the other like really long. You want to kind of make them as equal as you can. Still not good. Okay, that's about right. So then you flip it over and there's some overlap right here. So I'm going to trim that off. And burn that edge. Get the edge here too. Doubly make sure that it looks good. Okay, it looks good to me. Except this isn't flat. So I'm gonna get that flat quick. Remelt it. Okay. Put your zipper end cap on, slide it down as far as it goes. See that? And we're gonna flip it over. Still got some bunching. I'm gonna take a little more off on this one. Okay, so fold it in again. Like that. Slide your zipper end cap over top of it. See what it looks like on the front. If you're happy with that placement, I think it's good. I'm going to screw the screw in. First, I'm going to put the tiniest, ittiest bit of glue inside that little tiny hole. And kind of push it in there a little bit with my stiletto so it doesn't squeeze out the side. Okay, get that off. Now, it's easiest to put the screw in if you have a magnetic screwdriver that can grab that little tiny screw. So I'm going to set this down just so I can line it up. See, it just grabs it like that. Otherwise, you got to fiddle with it, trying to grab it and hold it. It's a pain. So just going to start screwing it in. If you have trouble with this, you can use your stiletto to like poke a little hole in it first. If you are having trouble or if you want to. Okay, once it's in there good. Nope, not quite flush yet. See, it's sticking up like that. It shouldn't. It should be flush, flat. So I'm gonna get another screw. That one just might be a little made a little wrong. Okay, I'm gonna take care of that and I'll be right back. Okay, yeah, this one sits in there much nicer. On focus. See how it's not sticking up at all? It's like flat. So that one's good. And it'll just hang like that inside your purse. Okay, next step. Okay, so we are gonna put our lining together. You can decide if you want the slip pocket or the zipper panel or the zipper pocket at the back. I like to have the zipper pocket in the back, so when you open the bag, this is what you see with my logo there. So we're going to start with this one. Now you want your zipper opening from left to right. So when it's closed, the zipper pull should be on the left hand side. You're going to take this top seam, center it on your panel. It should line up perfect. You don't really have to center it. Clip and then sew this on at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, I thought I'd get you in on a little bit of sewing action since I haven't really done that the whole video. Doke. There's that. Let's get all these clips out the way. Okay, now we're gonna sew on the other side of this. And get our other lining. Let me switch it back just a touch. Sorry. Okay, we'll get this other lining piece. And we're gonna lay the other seam. Oop, what's that? This other seam right on top. Line it up good on both sides. Make sure that both of your lining panels are lined up along both sides. We're going to clip that in place and then do the same thing. Sew it on at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, here we go again. Hold them tails. me see. Okay, we got our 2 lining pieces sewn to our zipper panel now. Now we just need to close up our ends. So we're gonna make our zipper panel go up like that, or you could have it go down like that, whichever you like. I'm gonna put mine up so it's out of the way. And I'm gonna take my zipper end and clip that about the way so we don't sew over it. I'm gonna line up our sides here all the way down our side, and our zipper panel, we want to make sure that this exact seam right here is lined up. So we're going to line that up, clip it in place, and then we're going to clip all the way down this side and then all the way down this side. And then we're going to sew them together with a 3/8 inch seam allowance, I believe. Let me just check. Yep, 3/8 inch seam allowance. We're going to turn our bag out through this bottom. So we need to leave it open, but we also need to box our corners. So when we get our sides done, we're going to sew only like maybe an inch or two, like this much. Let's see, what's that? Like a 1.5 to 2 inches we're going to sew, just so that it's got a seam there so we can box our corners. And then the rest is going to be left open so we can turn our bag through it. So let me go get these sides clipped and sewn in place, and then I'll be right back. Also, pro tip, if you are sewing on an industrial and sewing some super skinny linings together like I am, you can grab some ribbon that, nope, not this one, just some regular ribbon, and clip it on down your seam here, where you're going to sew, just to give it some thickness. You can also use interfacing or just another piece of material that you don't care about, just to give it a little bit of thickness so it doesn't bunch. Even if you adjust your tension, sometimes it busts. It'll bunch up. So I'm going to throw some ribbon down that side, or down both sides. Okay, so I ran the ribbon down that side, which lets it be not bunched on the lining part. Okay, so we're going to sew the bottoms now, and just to leave the biggest opening possible, I'm actually only going to sew 3/4 of an inch along the bottom, just that little tiny bit, so it's just enough so I can box these corners. So let me do that real quick, and then we'll get to the boxing quarters. And let me just say that you really want to backstitch good right here, because there's going to be a lot of pressure on this little tiny seam right here for when we're turning it out. So it's a good idea to backstitch just a couple of times extra right there. Okay, so when you box your corners, it should look like this. I like to nest my seams down at the bottom here. So this one's going this way, the bottom seam's going that way. We're going to sew along this bottom straight edge, and I just like to clip the little, I don't know, kind of looks like a triangle if you see it straight on. Yeah, I clip these just to hold this in place a little bit better while I'm moving it all around. So then we're just going to sew across this with a 3/8 inch seam allowance, just like we did the side. Okay, I like to sew a second row of stitching right outside of the first one that I did, just to give it a little extra stability since there's going to be, well, at least in my bags, I have a lot of stuff in my interior of my bag, so I don't want these to come undone over time. So we're going to do the same thing to the other side, and then our lining is complete. We can trim down the rest of the seam allowance right here, and on the sides. And then we're gonna sew the exterior and the lining together, and we're just about done with our bag. I forgot to mention, if you're going to be nesting your seams like I did, make sure that this bottom one, it's going the same way. You don't want this side to be flipped going, you don't want this bottom side to be flipped going that way, and then the top to be going this way. You want them both to go this way. So as long as you make sure that that's like that, if you can tell. And then this side is going the opposite way. Let me get it in camera here, sorry. I'm gonna sew that on just like the other side. Okay guys, the moment we've all been waiting for. At least I have. Okay, we are going to put our bag together. So I took my exterior, which is right side out, and I put it inside my lining, which is right side in. You want to make sure the back of your exterior is touching the back of your lining. So the back of the bag that had the magnetic snap slip pocket is going to be right sides together with the interior lining side that had the zipper pocket. So this is the front of the bag. I can tell because this is the slip pocket. And that's the zipper pocket. And that's just the back of the bag. So, because your lining is meant to go inside your bag, putting your exterior inside the lining is going to be a tight fit. It will go in there, as you can see. It's real tight though. So what I did is I started by lining up my centers and the center side seams and clip those in place, and then as you go you kind of just pull and wiggle and then clip as you go. And obviously that's why I have 30,000 clips on here, is just to make sure that I get it all aligned properly. Also, you want to butterfly open all your seams for the lining and for the exterior to help with bulk. And then once you have that all clipped in place, we are going to go ahead and sew that together with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. So this is going to take me a quick sec. I'm going to go nice and slow, make sure that my seam doesn't slip. I'm going to use a stiletto to make sure my seams don't slip, and to make sure I keep it at that 3/8 all the way around. As soon as I get that done, I will show you what that looks like. Side note, if you haven't changed your bobbin yet, for the second time, you want to at least check it before you do this. You don't want to stitch and realize halfway through that your bobbin ran out. So just letting you know. me left in there. Let's see. Alright. Oh, that's gonna go in here. There we go. Okay. You time to get left on fridge. Oops, there goes the clip again. Oh, beautiful. Okay. Now I'm just gonna turn it out. Let's do that. Alrighty. Let's get this baby turned out. Okay. So, we're just gonna pop this baby out the bottom here. Get the one side going. Get the other side going. Poor girl's all crumpled up. That was an easy turn. There she is. Okay. So, I'm going to shove this lining down there. And even though you think that's the top, that's not the top. This is the top. Right here. So, we gotta roll this pink facing down inside. Just kind of roll these seams together till they play nice. Get her mostly down in there first. Then we can roll the seams up. Oh, she's pretty. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna probably stick my hand up in here. on the inside of the lining, I have my hand so that I can roll this seam out a little bit better. And I like to put the lining just a hair in and down so that when you look at the front, you can't really see it. You can make the tops even if that's what you like. You can do that too. This is just preference. I'm sticking my hand inside the lining down through the bottom hole so I can get the seam the way I like it before I top stitch. You could use a turning tool instead of your fingers too. Or nothing at all. So I would say if you're sewing on a domestic and you are choosing to use vinyl fabrics, this is where your problem's going to be, is right here. Where the front panel meets the side panel and then the facing. Like this is a thick seam right there. The back one's not as good, is it? Yeah, it is. Okay. Yeah, it's going to be those seams where the seams join or connect. I rolled a little too much, made my seams pop. So if your seams, I don't know if you can see that, start popping like that, you can just roll the fabric so that it's not pulling on those so tight. So I go inside and I pull the seam allowance down a little bit, and then it will roll the fabric kind of up a little bit, I guess. And then you just pinch it right there. See, now it was like popping all along here, kind of like this right here. And now it's not. So I just pull on the seam allowance right here, and see when I pull on it, it like, instead of pushing it out, up and out, you pull on it and it pulls that little part of the seam down in, and you pinch the fabric. So it covers that up. And you can see maybe the popping went away. I think it does that if your seam's not absolutely perfectly straight, and it's like a little more or a little less in one area, and it pulls on those stitches where you had like a bigger seam allowance, and then it looks like that. But there's a fix for it. I feel coordinating red instead of contrasting like I use, it's a lot less noticeable. Or if you had printed fabric, it's less noticeable than on a solid color. And I just roll it under and then you'll never know. We can't all be perfect, can we? Of course, some people are. I try to be, and I have this issue with spending too much time on things because I'm such a perfectionist. But in the end, I think we all have a little bit of that in us, even if we don't think we do. Sight time 101. The star stitches. Okay. 5 years later, and we might have this done. We're close. We're getting there. We're very close. Once this is done, we can top stitch around an 1/8 seam allowance. I'm gonna have to double check my tension, so I make sure I get pretty stitches, because I'm gonna have to sew. I do not have a cylinder arm. Wish I did, but I don't. So I'm gonna have to sew from the inside of the bag. I'm thinking other ways it's just not gonna work. I think I have too much bag in my way. If I do it that way, it probably won't turn out as nice. So I'm gonna have to sew from the inside of the bag, the lining side, so my bobbin stitches are going to be on the outside of my bag. So to double check to make sure that those are going to be as pretty as I want them to be, what I do is I take this exact same seam, the exact same material, the exact same interfacing, the exact same everything, and I make a sandwich of it, and then I run it through the sewing machine until I get it just perfect. And once I do, Dang, this got real wrinkly. Pushing it out. And let's see what the front looks like. Ooh, she's pretty. I think she's beauteous. You know, I'm almost wishing I didn't do the floral. If I would have just done black where the floral was, ooh, I think this would have been super classy purse. I was just in spring mode. I feel like doing flowers. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and sew around that at 1/8 inch seam allowance, top stitch I mean. And then when that's done, we're gonna do this. We're gonna unzip this inner pocket since we left the pocket open. And I'm gonna pull the bottom of my lining out through my zipper pocket. Starting at this box corner and pull it to this box corner, pull it nice and straight and tight. Can't see what I'm doing. I'm gonna grab this seam right here. Grab that seam and sew it from this hand to this hand. Sew that shut, and once that's sewn shut, when I put it back in the bag, you won't see that seam. It'll look like just like any other seam. Once that's done, shove that back in, and you can pull out your pocket lining. And since we already folded it up when we stitched it shut to begin with, all you have to do is line up those edges like so and stitch it closed. I like to stitch these as close to the edge as I can, somewhere around like a 1/16 of an inch, like super close. And I even shorten my stitch length quite a bit, just so you don't get that big, like weird feeling seam in the bottom. You could also hand stitch it shut if you wanted, if it bothers you that much. It doesn't bother me enough to hand sew it, so I'm just going to sew it like normal. And then the bag is done, so I'm going to go ahead and top stitch quick, and then I will, I'll show you how I do the rest. That's fine. Okay, I'll be right back. Okay, I got my lining pulled out through my zipper pocket, and I clipped it in place. I'm just going to sew that and then shove it back in. Just going to mention that we are starting and stopping at this little tiny seam that we had on the bottom during construction. So we're going to start on that one on the other side and then stop when I get right there. Okay, that's done. We're going to slide that back into our pocket, through our pocket, down into the bottom of the bag, and push it down in all the corners so that it sits nice in there. And it's not a baggy bottom. It's good. My first one was a little baggy. I adjusted the measurements. Looks good now. Okay. So now need to pull out that pocket lining. And had I been smart and did my strap first like I usually do, we'd be done right now. But I just wanted to like quilt right away, so I wanted to get to that step where I could quilt, and adding a strap step in there was going to take longer. So I waited to the end, and now I am regretting it. Even though the pattern is written that way. Okay, so I'm going to trim down this corner right here on my pocket. Little corner here. So when I fold it up, it looks nice. That just went all over my floor. Okay, so we're just gonna pinch it at the edge on each end and then clip it in place. So I'm just gonna sew that on quick. Oh, I got a little thing hanging out. I need to boop that. Boop, boop. Okay. I'm just gonna go sew that together quick and I will be right back. Okay, there it is all stitched up. Now we're just gonna shove it back in there. Poke them corners down and out. Okay, done and done. Zip this up. A little wrinkled, but there she is. I'm loving her. She needs to have, I need to go around and pinch all my seams here to get her properly structured. Sometimes I like to heat up the vinyl a little bit with a blow dryer, and then I'll pinch the seams how I want them, and then once I got them how I want them, I hit it with cold right after the warm, and it kind of like locks it in place so that it holds its shape how I want it to. See, it should be like squared like that. And this one's kind of roundy. I guess it doesn't matter. It can be roundy. Okay, we just have the strap left to go. Might as well stick the chains on it for now. Hold on. Okay, these are the chains that I'm gonna use. They're just little 8-inch Cuban link chains or something. It's like the style or whatever. So we're gonna do one on each side. And then my double-sided strap is gonna go in the middle, which you can make that any length you want. You could have this be like a high up shoulder strap. So you could just make this like, I don't know, 12 inches wide, your strap. The strap that I'm using is 20 inches. When it's all said and done, it's 20 inches. So how it hangs, I'm 5'6", so the way it hangs on my shoulder, and the bottom of my hand cups the bottom of the purse. So that's like just below my hip. So it like, you know, cups it right there. And that's at 20-inch length handle. But you can adjust that. You can make it, 40 inches long if you want to do like a crossbody. I don't know how long. You could do adjustable strap. Whatever you want. I don't think that it's too big to have as a crossbody, and actually the 20-inch strap that I use in the pattern with the chains. It makes it 40 inches long. So when I put it over my shoulder, like a crossbody, it hangs like right here on my hip, like right in this area. It with the coat, it probably wouldn't look too good, but with regular clothes on, it was, yeah, I'd wear it like that, no problem. So, okay, we're gonna start doing the strap next. I'm sure you probably know how to do a strap, but I'll show you anyway in case you don't. Okay, so to do the double-sided strap, first thing you want to do is run a line down the center. And then I'm going to run a strip of some fatty double-sided tape down the center. It's less than 3/4 of an inch, which is what the finished size will be for the strap. Do that to both of your pieces. I already did it to one, and you just bring the edges together, clip them in place so they don't move, and then I'll show you what the next step is. Okay, so after you get them both folded properly, you're going to lay one on top of the other, bam, and we're going to pin them like that. But I am going to push as hard as I can on these so that they don't lift up before I can get them stuck together. So I'm going to put some more of that tape down this center of one of them, and then stick this on. So like I said in the pattern, one of these is shorter. Okay, so you have like your top side of the strap and the bottom side of the strap. And then this is like shorter than this one's, the blue one's going to be the underneath. So it's actually shorter than the upper one, and that's so, I'll show you. And so when we put our D-ring or swivel hook, if you're not using the chains on, you can fold it over this one like that. And you don't have double bulk. It'll just be the 3 pieces instead of 4 pieces that you have to fold over and put a rivet through or sew your lines or whatever, however you're going to do it. So you need to center, mine is the blue one, the smaller one, which is going to be the underneath of the strap. You need to center that on here, and it's 2 inches shorter, so that should be 1 inch on either side. So if you want to go ahead and measure 1 inch on either side, make a little mark on the wrong side or the back side of the longer strap, just so you know where to position your shorter part of the strap. And then you can stick it together, clip them together, and we're going to sew all the way down one side, down the little tiny end, which is like the longer strap, and then all the way down this other side, and then down the little short strap. So you're not actually sewing across the short side of the shorter one. So I don't know if that makes sense to you or not, but I'll do that quick and then I'll show you. I did want to mention that when you're doing this, you want to like look down at it from right over top. Make sure that they're lining up real good on both sides, and only peel as much tape as you need to as you're working with, so that, whoops, you can line it up properly. So I'm going to do a clip, make sure this bottom one is stuck down nice, remove some of the backing tape, look over top of it, line it up, and push it in place. Put a clip where I last stuck it, and then one in the middle. And that's how I do it. And then also, you don't want to do this like the day before you're going to sew it. you want to do this right before you sew it, because leaving these clips on like overnight just even can really dent this stuff good, and sometimes you can't get it out. So I'm only going to put this together if I'm going to sew it like right now, which I am. So let me sew this together quick, and yeah, I'll just sew it quick and then I'll show you. I'm also going to be rechecking my tension. So I'm going to take a piece of this, fold it in half, because that's how much is on there. It's doubled up. And then a piece of the same type that's on the back. The blue and the pink are the same material. And put them together. I'll just go like this. And I'm going to stitch down the side and then double check both sides and make sure that I'm not seeing like one side being pulled farther to one side than the other. I want the strings to meet in the center of the fabric. I don't want to see the little dots in between my stitches on either side. Yeah, the thicker your fabric, the tighter your tension. The thinner your fabric, the looser your tension. Okay, I'm going to show you. So this is what the front side looks like. This small skinny stitch was my first one. So the top looks great. You flip it over to the back, and if you can see, that middle one has little tiny dots in every needle hole. There, you can see it there. That's because and this is on the bottom, that's because my tension wasn't tight enough for my top string to pull that back up through the fabric, because the fabric's so thick. So you tighten it a little more until you get it just right. And the bottom one looks okay to me. So I'm going to start stitching. Okay, now I like to take my ends and give them the smallest, teeniest, tiniest little trim. It's next to nothing, but it straightens up both ends in case it was a little wonky there at the end after sewing. That's the bottom, and this is like the softer, squishier side. I put it on the bottom so it has like a little padding, and then that'll be the top. Okay, put the D-ring on. It goes right up to where that bottom one is, and then you just fold this over, giving it just enough space. It sits right on top of the blue fabric. So we're going to clip that in place, and then I use my ruler to mark the center, and oops, can't see it, mark the center from right to left, and where I want my placement for this rivet is like right about there. Right underneath where the D-ring is, to the bottom of here, kind of makes a square, so you just want to center it in that square. And do the same thing on the other side. Slide it on, fold it down, get it where you like it. I'll measure quick, make the mark, and put the rivet in. Real quick, that dot is my is my placement for my rivet. I don't know if you can see that little tiny dot right there. That's it. Okay, rivets are in place. All we gotta do is clip it on. I'm so excited. Okay guys, there's our bag. So exciting, so exciting. I had so much fun making it and hanging out today. I hope you get this pattern if you haven't already. It's a fun sew. It is my first pattern and this is my first video ever, so I really hope you can forgive all my weird mannerisms. I've caught myself repeating myself many, many times and don't notice I'm doing it at the time. So I hope you can forgive me for that. And my not so great lighting situation. I don't have great equipment. You know, it hasn't happened yet. So maybe one day. I'm hoping to do more patterns and do then maybe more tutorials for those patterns if the interest is there. So I will leave all my info in the description box. I had so much fun. I'm so glad that I did this, and I'm so happy that you're watching it. We will maybe see you next time. Thanks so much. Have a great day.